Welcome to WAVE, Women Veteran Entrepreneurs, a network for building capacity. My name is Omar Mohammed, helping you improve and progress in business and in life. My co host over there is.
Major General Linda Singh. I'm retired, a veteran, and so this is makes me very happy to be here with you all today.
All right, good deal. So, as you know, on the wave, as you can see in the background, we work with women veteran entrepreneurs of color. So, we really want to begin to provide resources to help them build capacity. And as you see, we have another guest, and her name is Sonia Hinds. Now, she has multiple companies. So, I'm going to let her introduce the companies that she has, and then we're just going to have some conversation about how she got started in business, some challenges, and some resources that she can help all of us with. So, Sonia, welcome. First of all, welcome to Wave. How are you?
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Dr. King, and I also want to thank Don Tucker, who,
Yes.
yes, Don is who sort of provided this opportunity. I want to thank Don for that. It's a pleasure to be here and to be on this podcast.
Okay. Well, good deal. So let's start off with this first. Then we'll jump right into your business. That's funny. That's a good podcast. We'll jump right into your business. So what branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the Army, in the Army Nurse Corps back in geez, 19, wow, 70,
You can say around.
79, yeah, around, early 70s, yeah.
All right. Well, good deal. Well, thank you for your service as always. All right, and let's jump down into your business. So you have two companies. So let's talk about those companies. Well, before you do that, why did you start? Why did you get involved in entrepreneurship?
Well, first of all, I have to say that if you hear an accent, when I speak long enough, you hear an accent.
Do you say I have an accent? I have a
If
slight
you,
accent.
no, if you listen to no, if you listen to me speak long enough, you will hear an accent.
Yes, she's
I
from
hear
one
you.
of the
Yeah,
islands.
right.
Yeah.
And I am, I'm originally from Panama, Central
Oh,
America. My ancestors migrated from Jamaica and Barbados in search of a better life and opportunity. And so they were sort of entrepreneurs themselves, I guess. They got on a ship
mhm.
and went, across the waves in search of opportunity. And so my parents were born in Panama, and so was I. And so I was born and raised. So when I speak English, I have a West Indian accent, and when I speak Spanish, I have a Latina accent because I was born and raised in a Latin American country.
Okay.
And so, do you want to tell me? You want me to tell you the whole story from the?
Well, we have some time, but
Okay.
yeah, we have
All
some
right.
time.
So I was, like I said, I was raised in Panama, and my parents worked for the American government to help construct the Panama Canal.
Oh, wow.
So the American government created communities for us, and we lived in a sort of like a compound. We had our own educational system. We had our own, um, our own called it commissaries. Then it was like it was almost like a military base because they, imported people from the tribe. The attempted with the French and the Chinese, and they didn't endure the malaria and the illnesses, so they died off. So they brought the West Indians, which, the West Indian blood, I guess, is stronger. So we were able to endure. And then by then they had the cure for malaria and the mosquitoes and things like that. So it was a really rough time, but we endured that. And they brought their culture to Panama. So that's where we grew up, and we had to, so we were poor, but we didn't know it, because a lot of what we had was subsidized by the American government. So when so we the Panamanian government made it mandatory for us to assimilate into the culture. So
Mm,
we had to learn the language, and so we became bilingual.
mm,
And so when we when I started school, kindergarten, I didn't know Spanish and the teachers didn't know English. So we had to learn.
You have to learn.
Uh, right, exactly, and assimilate into the culture. So if you know of any Panamanians listening out there, we are very proud of our dual culture um, that we have. But anyway, so in Panama, we had to make ends meet, and my father was an entrepreneur himself. So
Oh.
he basically sold lottery. He had a little lottery going, and he sold lottery, a little entrepreneurship, so that to help ends meet. But there was all my parents. I'd say growing up, I was like the golden child, to say that my parents really pushed me, and they had a lot of hopes in me. And because there was so much identification with the United States, the dream was always to go to the United States. Like when I graduated from high school, that was my parents' plan, to have me go to, because I did well in high school, and sort of graduated, sort of on top of my class, so I did really well. And so the hope was that I was going to. I had an aunt that owed my father a favor, and the favor was to sponsor me in the United States. So as soon as I graduated from high school, I was off to the United States, and so my job was to enroll in college. I went to Pace. It's now Pace University. Then it was Pace College, right in Manhattan, in New York. And so I wanted to be an educator, and then but then I became a nurse, because in order to get a visa, they were looking for teachers. In order to get a permanent visa, if you were a teacher, it was easy. But then they changed, they decided they had enough teachers. But if you were a nurse, you could get a visa. So I changed my major to nursing, because it was a matter of survival. And I had to, get my green card and, be successful and that sort of thing. So I always had that push to be successful, to make something of myself, and to take, to seize opportunities. And so I focused on my education. And when I graduated from college, and I had my high school sweetheart that came to the United States. So the military basically was an in
Mm,
for us,
Mhm.
mm,
because when in Panama, I was born on, we would say, American soil, because the Panama Canal was leased by the American government.
mm.
So there was sort of like a loophole in our birth certificate, because we were born in American soil. And so that gave us like an in to the military, because the military was like the salvation to, it was a way to to have an opportunity for a better life.
Mm.
And so there were many of us that came to the United States on a visitor's visa with the intent to stay and get right in. So we would get off the plane and go right to the recruiting station. And because it was at the heels of the Vietnam War.
Mm.
So the rules, so they were recruiting right and left.
Yeah.
And so there were many of us that came in and made a life for ourselves. But I came to go to college because I had an aunt and she sponsored me. But many people that came didn't have sponsorship, but they found it in the military.
Mm.
And so when I graduated from college, I worked in a regular hospital.
Mhm.
And then, but I wanted more. I wanted to be. I heard about the military and about Walter Reed and the training you could have and that sort of thing. And so I did my research. And when you enlist, when you're commissioned in the military, you have like they call it your dream sheet. You can request like you had three places,
Yes.
three stations. And I requested Walter Reed because Walter Reed was the up and coming hospital that could get a lot of training. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be trained. And so I signed up for Walter Reed, and I served at Walter Reed, and I did really well. I did so well that I was chosen to work on the VIP ward.
Mm.
And so I was able to meet dignitaries from all of around the world. I was able to meet the princess of Thailand, and
Mm.
um, Ahmad Sadat's wife. I was able to meet a lot of dignitaries, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me. And so after 5 years of being at Walter Reed, and I was able to make rank because I was I was a go-getter. So I was a captain. I was Captain Hinds. And so after I got married, and so my husband was my dependent, and we had a son. So it was difficult to, because after 5 years, after 4 years, you get marching orders to be stationed someplace else. And so I, so what I did was I did my research and I found out about the U.S. Public Health Service under the Department of Health and Human Services. And so after 5 years, I resigned my commission. I was recommissioned into the U.S. Public Health Service as a commissioned corps officer. And that gave me the opportunity to excel because I worked at what was then called St. Elizabeth's Hospital, or St. E's. St. Elizabeth's Hospital is the public hospital in Washington, D.C. So that if there was a court case, let's say there was someone scaled the White House, that's where they would go, to St. Elizabeth's Hospital. So John Hinckley, that's the hospital that John Hinckley shot President Reagan, and that's where he was for many years. And that's the hospital I worked at. So that hospital gave me a lot of opportunities because you could almost, it was like a blank slate. You could almost do what you wanted and create what you wanted. And I worked on the children's unit. I became the nurse manager on the children's unit. And so the resources that we had were very limited. And one day as a manager, a brochure came across my desk that had to do with play therapy because we worked with young children. And I attended that, and it really helped me because I was able to take what I learned and apply it to the inpatient unit. So I became known for play therapy, and I decided to turn it into a business
Oh, wow.
because in the Washington, D.C. area, there were very few people that were using that modality.
Yeah.
And so I had a mentor that really led me into that direction.
Mm.
And so what I did one day was my husband and I cooked dinner and we invited other clinicians and I created an institute, and it was Chesapeake Beach Professional Seminars. And I was like really the only one in the area, I'd say one of few that did that. And many people today that have their credentials as a registered play therapist. A registered play therapist is a mental health clinician, a licensed clinician that's trained to do therapy with young children.
Oh,
And
wow. Oh,
yeah, and I have to say with pride that many clinicians today that have their credentials got it in my institute because while I didn't do the training myself, I brought clinicians together that helped me get it put in place and recognized nationally. And so and it's been, and that was in 1998. And today it's still well and alive. And so there are many more institutes, but mine was one of the first. And so while I was at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, I was a registered nurse, but I went back to school and got my degree. I went back to Howard University. I got my undergraduate at Wagner College on Staten Island in New York. And then when I was at then I worked at Walter Reed, and then I worked at St. Elizabeth. And so the military paid for I got a free ride. And they paid for well, it wasn't free because we really paid for it while where you on, nothing is free, right? I put in my time. And so that was paid for, and I got a master's in mental health nursing, and that allowed me to take the route to become a registered nurse psychotherapist. So my credentials are similar to the nurse practitioner, although I do not prescribe. I conduct psychotherapy. And so today my institute has trained hundreds of mental health clinicians and that have had them. So there is an association in California that provides the credentials, and they have been recognized to them. And I also have provided them with consultation and some of the things that I have adapted because of my faculty, the association have adapted as well. And so my inspiration really the military, I guess I was inspired because working at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, we didn't have a lot of resources. So, I had to be creative. I remember going to Bowling Air Force Base on base and buying toilet paper because we didn't have enough toothpaste and toilet paper because the times were rough. I mean, but I was determined that my unit was going to be great. We paid, bought toys for the kids, and it was a token system where they got it to use these toys for good behavior. I mean, we did a lot of creative things, but it was a play therapy that I learned through my mentor and brought it to the hospital. And when I was at the other thing that the military did for me was I I was determined to make rank. So I did things like I put myself in position where I was able to publish chapters in books, and that gave me points to get promoted. So when I retired, I retired as an '06, and I was like in
Yeah.
in one of the few I guess in from Panama, my country, one of the highest ranking um, officers in my from Panama,
Wow.
where I'm
So
from. So
let
that's
let
poured
me
into a
jump in
lot
real
of
quick. So let me jump in because
yeah,
you're saying I mean I love your story, and you said a whole lot of nuggets that's
Sure.
going to help a lot of women veteran entrepreneurs to build capacity, and that's what this podcast is all about. So I do want to ask this question, and I Major General, you could jump in as well. So your entrepreneurial journey really started from, I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong. Pops had his own business, so
right, right,
it
yeah,
was it was in the blood,
Yep.
yeah,
and it was inspired by a number of things, the military, and you had a mentor as well.
yeah.
So, uh, how did you, from your perspective in starting a business? You got multiple resources. So you got the military, you went to college, you got some other expertise. As women are thinking about either starting or expanding their business, what advice would you give them to really go after those resources and not say that there are no resources out there?
But I think that we all had to step on somebody's shoulder to
Hmm.
lift us up, and so I was able to identify sort of like mentors and role models, and always looking for opportunities.
Always looking
And
for.
I'm a person that just kind of dream. I mean, I have created games and techniques, and I'm constantly, when I go to church services and I take notes. And sometimes the pastor says things that, boy, I could use that in therapy when I'm talking to my clients, or I can add that to my webinar. Like for example, the pastor said something like, what's in the well comes out in the water. That's the name
Mm,
of a book that was read by something, and I use that when I do my parenting training. What's in the well, like what you put. Like your parents are role models for their children, and
yeah,
so the children hear it from the parent. It's going to come out in other arenas.
right.
So, I mean, so my antennas are always up. I'm always looking for, how to improve myself,
Mm,
and I have notebooks with notes all over, and pieces of paper all over with, things that I can use for the future. But the one thing that I didn't mention was that when I retired from the U.S. Public Health Service, and I was done with that. I didn't stop there. I created a nonprofit, and
mm,
it's
Mm.
because I wanted to bring some diversity to my community in Carroll County, and I created what's called Barstow Acres Children's Center, which is a 501c3 nonprofit counseling center. And so I do counseling with children and families, and I'm one of the few in the county that do therapy with small children using play therapy because it's more work working with young children because you have to work not only with the parent,
yeah.
but you have to work with the grandparents, with the courts. Sometimes parents are divorced. You got to work with lawyers and the school. So it's a lot of work and it's a lot of sexual abuse and things that people don't really want to be bothered with. So I get a lot of those cases, but it just brings me a lot of satisfaction to. I went to get my car service at Toyota, and when the young man gave me a ride back to the office, and when he pulled up to the building, he said, "Man, I used to come here when I was little."
Wow.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm thinking, boy, I've been doing this for almost 20 years already.
Wow.
And people stop me and they said, "Miss Hinds, don't you remember me?" So I think that, it goes on and on and on.
So,
And
Sonia,
I
but one of the things that you mentioned very early on, which just struck me, and I wrote this down, that you came from a culture of entrepreneurship,
yeah,
which we need to inspire more in our society here in the US, this
yeah,
culture of entrepreneurship
yeah,
and realizing that you can pull that entrepreneurship from where you are. It doesn't have to be at these massive levels that you see with like the Amazons, right? Even Amazon started
right,
from a very small bit and piece. So can you talk
yeah.
about that a little bit more and how that culture of entrepreneurship has really inspired you along the way?
Right, because we had to make do with what we had when we were growing up, and so there was a family across the street that would sell. They would take flour and dough and make meat patties, and then they would sell sodas, and the lunch was like 15 cents. And we would go to the house and knock on the door, and we would buy that, and people would make food and make things from their home. And so when for me to raise funds for Barstow Acres, I would make dinners, like in the early days before we had grants, we would make dinners and sell dinners, like fish dinners, and I would make rice and peas, like, from my country, and plantain and all the chicken and plantain and all that. So, you just kind of look around and really use what you have. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be, it's just really brand names of things, but just look around and use what you have and the resources that are available to you and make it your own. I watch Shark Tank all the time, and I think like, boy, I wish I thought about that. Like people just really, come up with solutions of their own, and then they brought it, and put a name on it and make it theirs.
Mm. So we have about eight minutes left. So everybody and their mother watching Shark Tank. I've got, my daughter's watching it as well. Sonia, when I'm working with entrepreneurs, I'm always asking them, how do you duplicate yourself? How do you begin to stop working in the business? I know many times, we're working in the business until we have resources and knowledge to bring on additional people. From you, you have a for-profit and a nonprofit. So what's the secret sauce in stop working in the business and bringing on people
Right.
where they can,
Well,
you
yeah.
can delegate to them?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that because I get a lot of interns, like
Ah,
college interns that want to learn. They come from afar across the bridge.
mhm.
One guy drove like an hour and a half every day because they heard about me and they wanted to learn the craft, and so they come and I teach them. I teach them what I know, and I've had several that came back and to work with me
Mm,
in my practice. And one of the things that I do is I run a summer camp, a therapeutic summer day camp for kids, and I not only help the staff, I mean, like train people, but the people that work here, they get experience and they put it on their resumes. And so I had a brother and sister that worked for me, and they were 12. And then I discovered them later on as adults. They weren't going to college, they weren't doing anything, and they came and worked for me. And they put their money together and they were able to help their parents buy a house and get out of poverty just with working with me. And so I inspire people to do more. And so now they're going to college full time to improve themselves. So I think that I've done a lot for me, but I've also done a lot for the community and for other mental health providers that are trying to learn the craft and moving on. And I get letters from people that saying, "Thank you, you inspired me."
I love that. I was on mute.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very grateful for my humble beginnings because it's
Yes.
really brought me a long way and taught me a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not sure if you have another question.
I do. And so it's really on something that you hit on, because it's this whole thing of how do you kind of move from working in the business to working on the business, which,
Right.
you know, here I am as an entrepreneur myself with my own consulting business, and I'm faced with that even today, right? It's like, how do I get people not to say that I want Linda Singh, but I want the whole, you know, of what you can bring. And one of the things that you said that just strikes me, because I, you know, my husband is from the islands, and
Okay.
having been to a number of the islands, I love to go to the different islands, and it just, and what you said is this helping and this network and community. And so when I think about veterans and veterans working in, you know, and starting, wanting to start their business, you know, hit on and really highlight again this whole thing of community, because you talked about community very differently, but there's a community for veterans and
Mhm.
being able to help one another. And to me,
Okay.
that's an important recipe for success.
Right, exactly. And that's something that I need to tap into as well, because I'm so isolated here in Calvert County. I live in a very small rural community. And so I'm glad for this opportunity, because then I can even open up more into reaching out to other veterans in terms of, I get veterans as clients, um, to find out what else is out there, and expanding even more. And the one thing I forgot to say was I was able to take what I do to Jamaica. And so, yes, I did a workshop, and there was a woman, that a social worker, that said it would be great. And so I volunteered some of my faculty, and we went to Jamaica about 4 times to teach them. And so they have now teaching others, like each one teach one. And now that they have expanded and they have food therapy in Jamaica. But the military has opened up a lot of doors for many of us. It's saved our lives. It's provided hope and opportunity and a better future for many, many Panamanians, many of us. We don't know what we would have done without the military. Give us a great start. And I'm very grateful for the military for that.
Wow, you open up a lot of doors and a lot of nuggets too, you know. But we got about 2.5 minutes left. So Sonia, how can people reach out to you to learn more about what you do? Do you have your websites for both of your businesses?
Yeah, well, my website for the play therapy is C as in Charlie, B as in boy, P as in Paul, and then the word seminars. So CBP seminars at .com, .org. CBP. But if you do a search for Chesapeake Beach Professional Seminars, it'll come up.
All right.
Chesapeake Beach Professional. And then the counseling center is childrencenter.net.
Good,
And that's,
good.
yeah, that's in Calvert County. Childrencenter.net. And we're 501c3, and we take donations and grants and all those kinds of things, a lot of opportunities, because we let their help.
Absolutely. Well, Sonia, we really appreciate you coming on to the Wave Women Veteran Entrepreneurs podcast. Your story is insightful, inspiring, and you know the nuggets that you drop. Wow, you know I wanted to ask some more questions, so we may have to bring you back on to share that. Any final thoughts, Major General?
No, this was so amazing. And I will tell you that the military has opened doors for not just Panamanians.
Right.
I listened to your story, and I'm sitting here and going, so it's my story in a sense. And so I want to thank you for sharing that, because I think people needed to hear this. And I also think that people need to hear what it's like coming from other countries
Countries.
here into the US and becoming, you know, working until you can become an entrepreneur, because sometimes we miss that, and we miss the whole point of what our folks that have immigrated here do for our society and do for service. And so thank you.
Well, thank you for you've achieved your major general. So that is a great accomplishment, and thank you for the work that you do. And you yourself are a big inspiration. And I'll reach out. I'll reach out to you. I'll reach out to you.
Please.
Okay. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Good deal. All
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Omar. You did a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you. To listen to past episodes of Wave, you can find us at edacmorgan.com. And for those that are on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WVE Podcast. That's WVE Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, continue making a statement with capacity building. Continue to improve and progress too. See you next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was a great start. We had Sonia Hinds in to talk about her particular businesses and how the military really helped her get started or inspired her to become an entrepreneur. But prior to that, her father was an entrepreneur as well. So when you hear after we hear from an entrepreneur, we'll also go into some resources because again, this podcast really is about building capacity, helping women veteran entrepreneurs build capacity. So we'll always have a resource. So today's resource we have is actually it's kind of one of our own because it's us. It's EDAC at Morgan. You know, as I explained in the first podcast, you know, we're at Morgan State University and we're working with this particular grant with Truist Bank. So with that said, I'm gonna bring in the person that's gonna really help us along the way with this initiative called we call it the Women Platform, and we have no other than Don Tucker. Hey Don, welcome to the Wave Podcast. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
All right, good deal. So I know who you are. You know, let people know who you are. You know, in your background, and then we'll talk about some of the resources that we'll have for entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Dawn Tucker, and I'm president of Lord and Tucker Management Consultants. We are a management advisory firm that focuses upon federal government entrepreneurship. That is our sweet spot, if you will. We do other services, and we work with other organizations such as the Morgan State EDAC program, and we have been affiliated with the program for many years in different roles and responsibilities. Entrepreneurship is critical, but federal government contracting is even more critical. My background is that I worked in the federal government as a contract specialist, and that is a language in and of itself. That's how you learn, or how I learned how to become a federal government contractor from the inside. When I left the federal government, I started my own company, Lord and Tucker Management Consultants, and we've progressed from a solopreneur, mompreneur, solopreneur. Now we have 20 employees and we have several federal government contracts. And we are what is called an 8A firm. And all these things that we're going to learn about through this program under the women's platform.
All right, so good deal. Thank you, Don. And you know, we're glad to have you on board. You come with a great amount of skill set that's going to help individuals build their capability. All right, so whether they're going into government contract or just doing what you just said, moving from a solopreneur to having 20 employees, you know, not only women need it, but just entrepreneurs need it as well. But we're focusing on women here. All right, so I know we have this podcast. So the podcast is one of the resources under this women platform. What other opportunities will women veteran entrepreneurs of color have as it relates to the women platform?
Well, we're excited because over this next 8 to 9 to 12 months, we're going to have some jam-packed opportunities. Absolutely. We're going to have a training program that will be from a couple of hours every week, four classes that will talk about federal government entrepreneurship, and starting from the basics all the way up to those who know government contracting. And we'll bring in some speakers so that folks can understand how it actually applies to them and do actual hands-on exercises. Another thing that we're going to have are webinars. webinars on topics such as alphabet soup in the federal government marketplace.
Yes.
What is the FAR?
Yes.
I don't know. Federal Acquisition Regulation. And then we'll have, as Omar said, the podcast, and we're going to have a wonderful advisory board who will bring skills to the table.
Absolutely. And we'll also have some specialized webinars as well.
Yes,
You know,
yes. And the topics will be on things such as how to go about setting up an appointment with a military installation. If your background is in the military, you can go back and start doing business with the military installations. And how would I do that? And also, I don't know, Omar, if you've talked about the funding, the
yes,
opportunity for
that's definitely-
funding that we're going to have. And we're going to also have one-on-one counseling in partnership with the women's business centers across Maryland.
Absolutely.
So Dawn, can you talk a little bit more, because you started off and said you all are an 8A, and I think what most folks are like, okay, so what's 8A? And there are a couple of different certifications that you probably have. You're not only 8A, you're probably woman-owned, which 8A kind of puts you into that minority-owned category. Can you talk about how women, and in particular women veterans, can really make use of those categories, especially if they're trying to do work with the federal government or even the state of Maryland? And then there's the veteran-owned small business and service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So if you could talk about those certifications just a little bit, I think would be great.
Yes, very much so, Commander. Certifications in the federal marketplace will get your foot in the door. And at the federal level, as you stated, there are several different certifications, and people use the certifications to help do a subset of going after a contract. It'll put you in a smaller pool to help you win a contract. But even if you win the contract, you have to perform. You can't just, these certifications are great. So 8A is a program that the federal government set up where a business can come in and do sole source contracts, which means that you can win a contract without competing with anybody, up to over $4 million in the federal marketplace. And that's a lot of money. So that has helped me to move my business from a solopreneur up to 20 employees. As you said, for veterans, there's a program called the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program at the federal level. We will talk about that. The Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs at the federal level will provide contracts and set-asides for folks who are a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. There's also something called the Center for Veterans Enterprise, where they certify at the Department of Veterans Affairs at the federal level. Now, when you come down to the state level, there are certifications at the state level for veterans, but it's in the state of Maryland. But at the federal level, it's a little bit more defined. There's something here at the state level called the Maryland Minority Business Enterprise Program. So that I do have that certification as well. So all these certifications get your foot in the door. So once you learn how to do federal contracting or state contracting or local contracting, you will be able to get in there and win these awards. But then we're also going to talk about how you're going to perform on the awards. So hopefully, you know, it's a lot to it, but we're excited, and we're going to be talking about all these things and bringing in people who have these certifications or are making it work for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just another way to grow your business as well. You know, I know some entrepreneurs shy away from the certifications because sometimes they don't have enough information, and then it's just them. You know,
Yes.
I do work with the Department of Defense Mentor Protege Program, and I always tell people if it's a one-person operation, it's gonna be tough to really get this.
But you can do it, right? So
But you can do it, yes.
and you have to kind of set your priorities and work on it gradually, just to remember that none of these certifications take place overnight. But they are door openers. And I think sometimes we shy away from that. Now, Dawn, there's other resources that you all are going to be looking at within the state when you talk about bringing in folks? What other resources are there to help some of the entrepreneurs, the veteran entrepreneurs, to start working through some of these things?
Well, one good thing here in the state of Maryland for veterans, there's been what's called a Veterans Business Opportunity Center that has just been established at the University of Maryland. So we're going to provide information about how the folks who come through, the ladies who come through, that they can access the VBOC, as they call it. We also have at Morgan State, for example, and across a couple other areas in the state of Maryland on the Eastern Shore and in Rockville, women's business centers. And the women's business centers will be targeting how to reach out to these resources that are targeting veteran women as well. But these are for women, but they're also going to share with how do you do your certifications. They will walk our clients through how to establish or how to fill in their Maryland MBE or their CVE certification, or fill in their 8A forms. So the women's business centers are going to be able to help walk folks through that, not just where they're out there on their own trying to figure out how to get started and what to do first. We have so many resources that the federal government has provided that we have to take advantage for, because it's our taxpayer money.
And can you also hit on the PTAC and the SCORE?
Yes. The PTACs are Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and the SCOREs are another resource that the U.S. Small Business Administration has funded. And the SCORE are retired executives, and they also provide counseling. The PTACs, or the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, they provide counseling, free counseling, and they are also funded from the federal government through the Department of Defense. Here in Maryland, our Procurement Technical Assistance Center is based at the University of Maryland at College Park. They do have counselors at Fort up near Aberdeen Proving Ground in Southern Maryland, at the College of Southern Maryland. And they also have folks at the University of Maryland right there in College Park. So we will have folks come in and talk from those organizations as well. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely, because what I wanted to highlight is a number of these programs that Dawn has mentioned, and she kind of slid the word in there, but it's a 4-letter word, right? It's free. So make use of free resources, somebody else's money.
Absolutely, and take advantage of those opportunities too. So yes, and that's why we're here to open the doors, because some people may not know about those, and we'll be here to we'll interview a women veteran entrepreneur. We'll also be able to provide resources as well. So some of those names that Dawn mentioned, we'll have them on this particular podcast as well. All right. So Don, I don't know if we mentioned the annual event in April of this upcoming year. Did we mention that?
No. Okay. The creme de la creme, the cherry on top of the ice cream, will be a conference for women veterans in April of 2022. Hopefully we will be in person. If it's virtual, that's fine too. But this is going to be a one-day Power Pack conference. The core of it will be federal government contracting. However, because we know of the needs that are involved with veterans, and our commander, she can tell us there's so many other things around women who are veterans who have been in the military, and just women in general that need support with how to maneuver PTSD, how to work with your family, or if you're just other things that are needed to help. But even though we do want to grow our businesses, if we are not whole people, we won't be able to do that.
I love it. I love it. So, we have a lot of resources coming about, and you'll hear more about those on the Wave podcast. Any final thoughts from you, Dawn?
I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of this project. I have worked with veterans extensively in the past. I was able to win an award from the Small Business Administration, the Baltimore District Office,
Okay.
many years ago, supporting veteran entrepreneurs. And I'm glad to be able to come back and do it again, because they are the heart and soul. And we really need to make sure everyone is up and running so that we can keep our economy growing here in the United States and be the leaders around the world.
All right, good deal. Major General Singh, any comments, final thoughts?
Well, the last comments and when Dawn was talking about just our veterans and supporting them, folks, we need to highlight, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when you look at the contributions that our veteran-owned businesses make to our economy, I think you would be amazed.
Wow.
It is so much. And so without these veteran organizations and veterans starting businesses and sustaining businesses, it would have a significant impact on our economy if they don't do that. And so we really do need to even highlight that, because I don't think people realize how much it supports our economy and where that comes from. And so I want to thank you all for, really doing what you do. And Dawn, thanks so much for serving our veterans in just a very different way.
Thank you for your service.
All right, good deal. So again, to listen to past episodes of the Wave podcast, you can visit us at www.edac, that's EDAC, Morgan, all one word.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are only three we're going to be on for right now. And you can find us at WVE, so Wave Podcast, on all of those channels. So thank you for tuning in. And until next time, continue making a statement with capacity building. See you next time.